Hello, everyone. Welcome to Future Nonprofit, a podcast and YouTube channel where we talk with industry leaders both in and out of the nonprofit space about what it will take to build and scale the nonprofits of tomorrow. I'm Ted Vaughn, host of Future Nonprofit and co-founder of Historic, and today we're talking with one of the most formidable, strategic, tactical leaders we've ever talked with. She is the co-founder and CEO of CORE, a nonprofit started in partnership with Sean Penn that delivers global humanitarian response and long-term recovery solutions to underserved communities across the globe. And when I say across the globe, the scale at which they're operating is profound and inspiring. I can't wait for you to listen to this episode. And I want you to listen to all of the episodes wherever you get your podcasts or right here on YouTube. Join me as we talk with industry experts about what it will take to build and scale the nonprofit of tomorrow through innovative, strategic, passionate solutions. Just a couple of quick icebreaker questions. And if you were describing to a 5-year-old what you do in one sentence, what would that sentence be?
Ooh, that's a good one. I would say CORE helps communities in trouble from the inside out.
I love the inside out idea.
Yeah.
Can you just in one sentence to that same 5-year-old unpack what the inside out means?
So we work with communities and support the things and the good things that are already there and help them to get stronger so that they can support and fight against the difficulties that happen to those communities.
Love it. Super good. Is music a part of your life? Are you a music person?
Oh yeah. I love it. It's like a soundtrack to everything that happens. So I always have like a song that pops into my head with anything that happens. So
you're walking into the forum, the Los Angeles Forum, to speak to a room full of nonprofit leaders who have flown around the world, and you have to have your walk-in music. What is the piece of music that you walk into and why?
Oh. It's like da 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 da. No, I'm kidding.
I mean, that's an option.
It's the circus. No.
Right? It feels that way sometimes, doesn't it?
Sometimes, oftentimes it's like, this is the circus. Geez, that's a good one. I think it would probably be, oh God, I'm obsessed with the song right now, actually, that gets me pumped. It's by Angelique Kidjo and Sampa, and it's called Let Me Be Great. Such a badass song. It's amazing.
I'm writing it down right now.
Yeah. Let Me Be Great.
All right. Last kind of fun question. I love LA. I go to LA all the time. Was just at Taco Tuesday at Anna Jack Thai. I don't know if you've been to Anna Jack Thai, but it's amazing. What is your LA hotspot? What's the restaurant, the place, the LA spot that you go to? I've got like 10. What's your...
Yeah. I have so many. I think because I'm Korean and I love Korean food, I always go to this little tiny spot called Soban, Soban. It's my spot. They have the best food. Yeah. And not a lot of people know it, so it's not always crowded. There's only like 10 tables there. I love it.
Is it more Korean barbecue or more like elevated Korean?
It's like regular home cooking Korean food. And they have, their specialty is raw marinated crab and their codfish and their one meat dish that's not barbecue. So they don't do barbecue. It's really good. Yeah.
Wow. That sounds amazing. Have you been to any of the like the Cote Steakhouse in New York?
Oh yeah.
The elevated. How good is that place? It's not really like authentic good Korean, right? But it's like amazing quality. The experience is pretty awesome.
And in that sort of same vein, there's these two incredibly phenomenal Korean restaurants here called Yangbang and Baru.
That place. Okay. I want to go to story of origin. What I find is that everybody doing this type of work has a person or a moment in their past that was formative, maybe multiple, but there's one that's kind of more top of mind in this season. When you think about your past, your story of origin, Is there a person or a moment or a thing that you most identify with that's kind of contributed to the work you're doing now?
Yeah, I think I always go back to my grandmother and my mother, who have been sort of these silent and incredibly strong women who supported not only their family, but everyone else around them. You know, there's a huge influx of Korean immigrants that came to Los Angeles. And without knowing people, we often hosted people to stay with us who needed a place to stay. So they really instilled the sense of sort of service and community and the importance of, you know, without any payback to support anyone who's in need. There is a moment I remember in high school where, you know, I was the bad kid, barely graduated from high school, disaffected youth, smoking at the snake pit. And, you know, trying to like think about what it was that I wanted to do in life. And I remember going to like pavilions where we always, you know, picked up Panda Express. And in line, there's this really awful guy that was yelling at this poor Chinese woman who was serving food, like yelling at her, like, you better give me some extra dumplings or whatever it was. And just the way he treated her just kind of like sparked this internal rage that I didn't know where it came from. And without thinking it through, because he was a much larger man, I like just uppercutted him. And was like,
oh, you physically hit him?
Yes, I did. And thank God, like, people came and like kind of snatched him before he could get his hands on me, because he would have really done some damage. But I often look back at that moment of like kind of this realization of this internal rage against injustice, you know, and not being able to hold it in to be able to do something or to fight against it. I think I've learned how to kind of put that in much more productive places and less physical and violent places. But definitely, I think it's the you know, having instilled the sense of service and also tapping into this place of, you know, I have to do something if I can do something.
That uppercut story may be one of the best story of origin. like the only thing that can make it better is if you did it yesterday as CEO. That you're like,
trust me, I've thought about it often.
Sean Penn said something.
Exactly.
Oh man, that's so good. Okay, so I want to fast forward to Haiti.
Mm-hmm.
You're in Haiti. What brought you to Haiti in the very beginning? What was the moment, the reason, the cause that led you there?
Mm-hmm. So I was in New York when 9/11 happened, and I had watched the towers fall. And that was also another turning point for me. I was planning to go to law school and didn't really have a direct purpose of what type of law I was going to go into. When that happened, you know, I jumped in and tried to do what I could at the World Trade Center, and then shifted my whole focus into going back to school and joining the Foreign Service and, you know, becoming a diplomat and understanding why all of these things could happen in the world and to try to prevent them. So I went back to school, and it was during that time that I met this phenomenal professor, Professor Zartman, who I was trying to pitch a trip to Cuba because I really just wanted to go to Cuba. And he said, you know, there's a lot of things happening in Haiti right now. We should go to Haiti and do an entire semester around the history and the situation it's in, and go down there and meet, at the time, some presidential candidates, because it was the first democratic election that was happening in a while. So I had gone down there with this professor, and I just knew immediately within like the first 24 hours, like, I'm going to be here. There was something about Haiti that really touched me in terms of the history, the inequalities, also just the unfairness that the world has put on that country, that I felt very committed to doing everything that I could to get back there and to support these incredible people. So that's what brought me down to Haiti in 2005, initially through school. And then I went back there in 2006 until 2012.
So I want to go back to two specific memories I'm sure that you can remember based on these moments. First, the Twin Towers. So you're in New York. The Twin Towers are falling. Thank God you're on the other side of the city, but how did you feel? What was the emotion or feeling you had when that happened, when you became aware? Did that justice button get pressed again, or was it more compassion? Like what was or vulnerability? What was the feeling?
I think it's all of those things. It was scary to see the folks walking from lower Manhattan to where I was living, and they were covered completely in dust and rubble, carrying their suitcases and suits, and it felt like a scene out of a movie, ghosts, and it was scary. It was really scary. But I think after the initial fear kind of subsided, the next day I was trying to figure out, like, how do we help? How do we, bring food to the folks that were providing support down there? And so, I didn't know anything and just started packing up sandwiches and, walking it down there just to see what, whichever way that I could help. And so it was less of like a sense of injustice that it was like, I need to do something. I cannot watch something so devastating and just sit on my hands doing nothing.
Same question in Haiti in the earthquake of 2010.
That was really another turning point in my life. I was very lucky, just by chance, that I had extended my stay in Los Angeles to not be in Haiti. But I was able to fly back within 3 days of the earthquake because the team that was on the ground that I had been working with for 4 years were already trying to figure out, what to do when our office was partially damaged, when a lot of us lost our homes as well as family members. My apartment was completely gone. And so when I came back, it was just incredible to see sort of the way that people can get together in such a devastating situation. I remember one of our community mobilizers had lost his infant in the earthquake, and yet he still came to the office to see what he could do, to see how he could help. And in the face of that, it sort of, drove all of us to want to do more and do better and figure out how we could get people back on their feet. We jumped into the space immediately in terms of, getting outside of our comfort zone, and we just picked up whatever we could and just started digging in.
Connect the dots to Sean and the start of CORE. What was the crazy pathway that leads you to this, Hollywood icon, really, not even celebrity. He's an icon. He's so talented. And how did that result in synergy or working together in partnership?
So we met initially at this meeting that the military had organized to try to work together and bring some experienced folk to talk to Sean and his team, who were somehow managing one of the biggest displacement camps in Port-au-Prince. And he references this moment quite a bit because apparently you have like total resting bitch face sometimes. But on top of that, when you're just exhausted and have very little patience. And yeah, admittedly, I was not at all excited to meet some celebrity who was coming in to take photos and to pop right back out and, throw his weight around. So I probably was what he called the Korean ice princess at the time. So our first meeting was not really that great. But we were able to work with his team to provide some tactical support. So they were running a camp which means you have to make sure that all the, these really flimsy tents were reinforced with plastic sheeting and better materials, and then set up, everything between toilets to lighting to hospitals to, educational areas. While also considering that, people need to stay safe, that there's a lot of sexual exploitation that happens. So his team was running on so many different levels, and we were able to provide some support with heavy equipment because that's the stuff that we were doing a lot of debris removal, and somehow we became one of the biggest, if not the biggest, heavy equipment operators in the country during that time. And so we ended up working together a bit, and it wasn't for at least a few months when I saw that he was there. He was, living on the camp in a tent, that I was like, okay, this guy's legit. He's not just flying in and out. This is not just a photo op for him. And we ended up talking about some of these ideas that he had. And I think, for me, having somebody who's this big dreamer, who is not afraid of anything, who is outside of the system that I was so part of, right? Like, the humanitarian system works in a very specific way. You have these clusters, you have these mechanisms, you kind of, you fall into this practice that I think sometimes having somebody who's such a big outside thinker who's like, but why does it have to be like that? Why can't we look at it this way? Why aren't we doing it this way? Was so refreshing, and it was really awesome. So being able to brainstorm with somebody where it's like, think bigger, do better. That was a game changer for me. So what was great, and I think what we've been able to kind of work out, is that, we both, I've learned so much from him in terms of thinking big and not being afraid and taking risks and such, but then also have that balanced out with, okay, but we need to have the safety mechanisms and the systems and all those things in place. But we were able to really strike this incredible balance that we still share today. Like, he's not just one of, my mentors in life, but also just like a great thought partner and somebody that I talk to at least, once, twice a week for us to kind of talk through things, and again, being an outside genius brain that doesn't function the way that the rest of us does is an incredible gift.
So many nonprofits we talk to and I work with through my company are in the weeds of the day-to-day, the mission, the tactics. And in many ways, they become the barrier. And in some ways, their existence, their mission becomes to just stay alive. It's almost like there's mission drift because the needs of just operating and staying alive are so intense. What you talked about, having a person, a brain, somebody, celebrity status doesn't matter. They're helping you. They're thinking. They're an innovator. They're a partner, but they operate in that space. Talk to me about the blessing and the challenge that comes with that. Because I have to imagine, as wonderful as it is, it could also perhaps be like, listen, get out of the clouds, come down to the ground, or whatever else. Like, what's the tension with having that voice or person? Because I know a few organizations we work with that have CEOs who live in that space, and it can create amazing challenge and offer amazing benefit.
I think what's definitely, it's a blessing and a curse in that, sometimes it is about translating, knowing somebody so well that you're able to translate the things that are the most important into something that's doable. I think there's 2 points to what you were saying. The first is, kind of getting stuck into the mechanics of being an organization versus doing the things that you were meant to do. And sometimes when you become a large organization, you get mired in sort of the systems and like the red tape and the bureaucracy that you end up functioning to just survive. And we're always struggling with that because we do have to survive, and it is a struggle all the time. But on the flip side, I think it's the people that we've been able to surround ourselves with, where I don't know if it's, sometimes I think like, God, I must be the worst CEO ever, because there's been so many times where, you know, we've said to each other, to the board and to the senior leadership, like, well, you know, like, as long as we can continue doing good, whether it's individually or core, like core itself as an entity doesn't have to exist, you know, like it's not for we're not pursuing the eternal existence of core, that we do this work. I think we're always very driven by, are we making a difference? Are we doing the right thing? And that's often hard to do when you're also struggling with constantly fundraising. But I think the trick has been for us being conscious about remaining smaller, and retaining that nimbleness, adaptiveness, and making sure that, you know, as a CEO and our president, like we're on the ground, we're constantly looking at program development and touching in with the teams. Like we're not just sitting in an office, because I would lose my mind and quit my job if I did that. But I think making sure that we're constantly aware and close to looking at and feeling, are we making a difference? Is this the right thing? Are we being smart about this? And being constantly reminded about that is super important. So I never want to lose that. On the second part of your question, in terms of the blessing and the curse of big thinking and such, I think that the good has luckily completely outweighed the negative. Of course, we're going to fail sometimes. And of course, you know, it's difficult at some points, but I think Haiti has given us such an incredibly strong sense of weighing risks properly, that if it were not for Haiti and what we were able to do, then we wouldn't have jumped into COVID. We wouldn't have, you know, imagined ourselves as one of the largest providers of testing and vaccinations and wraparound services in the country during a pandemic, as we did, if we didn't think big and dream big, and maybe also be a little ignorant about all of the things that we should have worried about. So in the end, I think it's about weighing risks. The risk of inaction is often greater than the risk of the fears that you might have to do something.
So well said. So many nuggets that we'll be able to extract out of that. I'm going to bring us back to the timeline. And Sean's in a tent. You're working together. You actually see legitimacy and now you've started Core. Talk about the first couple of years. You're building something new. You're starting something. What's that journey like?
It was really difficult the first few years, I think, because we were kind of mismatched in terms of what we wanted to do versus where we were as an organization structurally. You know, we were initially just focused on Haiti. And I just knew that there was so much that we had to offer, that we needed to do. I think that we have a unique niche that we've been able to fill, that we don't often see in other organizations. Is very rare. And so I knew that we needed to kind of expand into different geographic regions. And that was not necessarily easy, because we were always known for like the Haiti organization. And building up that legitimacy, the sort of name recognition that we know how to do this in other places, was very difficult. Even with Sean sort of being vocal about it, I think it was awesome in the beginning that he would often respond to these crises with us. That was awesome. Like, we went to North Carolina during one of the biggest floods in 2018. And we're still there. We still work with the community that was affected there. We responded to Savannah, Georgia, when there was a big hurricane that hit there, together with Sean, and that helped. But it took a long time for us to kind of break into the domestic space. Strangely enough, a lot of my colleagues at the organization, we've been working internationally, and we never had the full breadth and experience that we needed initially to have that name recognition and kind of understand the systems in the United States, until we made that conscious decision post responding to some disasters to develop those skills.
I want to talk about that team for a moment, because it seems like there's this interesting meta narrative around core, right? And this is, an outsider shooting from the hip, right? But you want to uppercut injustice. You want to be boots on the ground. Sean's sleeping in a tent. Doesn't need, he's a celebrity. He has plenty of options, right? So at the heart of core is this kind of boots on the ground. We get it done. We show up. We're shoulder to shoulder. We're peers. What's the structure like? Like, do you have an organizational structure? Is there hierarchy? You're a CEO. Like, what's the tension of structure and scale versus boots on the ground, shoulder to shoulder within core?
So we do have a structure and systems in a way that still allows for me and our president and our VPs to really have boots on the ground. I mean, I respond to not all of them, but a lot of the disasters that happen. Because I would never ask of anybody on our team to do something that I wouldn't be willing to do. And secondly, I think it's always super important to be connected to the work and see that we're doing things in the right way. And, culture is everything. Our ethos is everything. And that's important to us. And so being there and seeing that and kind of living it as an example is important. Structurally, we grew like crazy during COVID, totally unexpectedly. Every month we were thinking, is this COVID thing going to keep happening? Like, is this a thing? Like we were just like, okay, we're doing testing this month, but is it still going to be needed next month? We didn't know.
I know, right? Looking back, it's so funny that we thought that way.
Right? It's so bananas to think back to that period of time. And so we expanded from 10 US-based employees to about 2,500, 3,000 in a year. And that was very painful. And again, that was going back to kind of assessing risks, right? We were very aware that we were in this very precarious situation, building this airplane as it had already taken off, but knowing that we needed to meet this unprecedented moment despite whatever costs that we would have to pay, because we were saving lives immediately. And so we made this conscious decision to build these systems as we were expanding into different cities to provide these services. And now we're in a place, post-COVID, where we still have these incredibly strong systems. Like for us right now, the safeguarding piece is super important. And all of these pieces that we've been able to layer on has been incredible, where it's like, okay, the next global pandemic, we are going to be able to do 3 times as much, because now we have stronger systems before, some things happened. But it's something that we constantly balance, as you said, like there's a lot of, structures and systems, but, we try to remain as accessible and flat as possible. We want to keep our teams light and nimble. And Jerome and I, our president, are very, very sort of in the weeds and accessible. I think also it helps that I don't have kids. I think this is all I have.
there's so many things I want to focus on. So before I thought it'd be a smart idea to do a podcast, I thought it'd be a smart idea to write a book, the hardest thing I ever did. And the book I wrote was called Culture Built My Brand. And the idea was about the intersection of brand strategy and culture. It's still on Amazon. Mm-hmm. I'll send you one. Yes, I'd love that. It was a playbook on how to instill brand into culture, because so many brands failed from the inside out. It wasn't an outside-in problem. It was an inside-out problem. Mm-hmm. So, and ironically, nonprofits are some of the worst offenders. Maybe it's because we just think brand's not important. It's the mission, it's the cause. But when you think about the complexity of donor engagement, cultivating peer-to-peer fundraising, all the new things, right? Brand is a critical conversation. Culture is a critical conversation. How do you intentionally or unintentionally keep culture intentionally moving in a certain direction? Because it sounds like there's a lot of values or principles or things at the heart of core. What does it look like for you as CEO or Jerome as president to steward those things, to keep those things alive and real or meaningful in core? It's two things. I think we're very lucky with the type of people that are attracted to this work, that they already have some of those things deep inside of them. You know, our values are really based around service and, you know, humility, learning, and trying to do good in the world. And we get a lot of folks that already have that as a baseline. I think layered on top of that is a conscious element of, okay, but, you know, the minute you put two people together, you have drama and emotions and all kinds of things, right? So it's inevitable. But how do we do this in a way that is constantly looking at the things outside of ourselves that pushes our mission forward, which is beyond just us? And I think a lot of that is focused around just kind of giving a platform for these incredible people who are doing this work, some time to speak about what drives them, what they experience, and the impact that they're making. So it's, you know, through these targeted opportunities for us to get together. I think because we all get stuck in life, you know, we get into the grind and worry about, like, you know, the bills, our kids, have to go see a doctor and all those things. And it's really awesome to be reminded why we are doing this and why it's so important. You know, so for us who are, especially here in Los Angeles, right, we're like, oh, it's raining so hard and all these things and whatever. We get stuck in the things that are important to us. But then meanwhile, in Ukraine, they're experiencing constant shelling, and our teams out there are running around 24 hours a day, you know, trying to address, you know, one of our staff members who lost their house in the most recent bombing, and, you know, responding to their partners on the ground. So it's a reminder to kind of, you know, remember why we're doing this. And a lot of that is like through webinars. We have town halls, and, you know, we try to give as much opportunity for these folks to kind of just share their experiences. And I think that's what makes the culture piece easier. Mm-hmm. And I think the other piece is through really being an example in how we do things. And again, I think that's why being on the ground with our team members and responding together and doing it in person is like, we want to walk the walk as well. There seems to be this really intrinsic idea of community baked into core, baked into how you lead. It almost sounds like you don't want to grow so big that you not only lose your nimbleness or agility, but you lose your sense of, I know these people, they know me. I'm not just some CEO distant from the organization. To what extent does community relationship, to what extent does that matter within core for the staff and the volunteers that are most engaged? And to what extent is it intentional versus just a really nice byproduct? It is intentional because that's what underpins all of our work. You know, we have our 3 pillars that we work in: the environment and disaster response. And for us, that's like the things that we do, but the how we do it is through the community piece. And it comes from, I think, especially as we saw during COVID, like we're fucked if we aren't looking at the world with
this sense of who we are related to and how we can be part of something bigger than ourselves, and for us, I think that piece is so critically important, not just, through these constant, moments that we have to kind of connect, like let's say we have like a conference or whatever, but it really is through like a humanization of just who it is that we're working with and why. Building that community is super important. We really encourage, like we try to do a book club, which didn't go very well because everyone's like, we don't have time. We have so much work to do. But it is, an intentional thing to try to create these moments where we can build on a sense of we are part of something, Yeah, it's not easy because I do think we all now have like overly packed lives and such. But I do feel like post-COVID, finally, we're at this place with this incredible team that we've built enough trust, again, through showing that we mean what we say, that we've been able to develop such a strong sense of belonging here at the organization.
Love hearing that. Oh, I want to talk about an odd topic, and I'm just going to throw it out there. And if you feel like you got nothing to say on it, no problem. Employee value prop. We all talk about the value prop for the consumer, the value prop for the donor, the value prop for the person receiving the services is sometimes obvious. But we often in the nonprofit space operate blind to the value prop for the person sacrificing their professional life, not probably making nearly as much money as they could. What's the value prop for the staff person at CORE? And to what extent do you feel like CORE tries hard not to exploit or manipulate or presume upon the bleeding heart of your staff? Because let's face it, if you've given your life to this, I know I have a heart that bleeds for, I want to uppercut stuff. So I make less money. I do this because I care, but I also am entrepreneurial and I want to make so how do you live in that tension with your staff and with your organization?
It's something that I've had to learn, I think, over time, because there is a breaking point for everyone. If they don't feel like, there's the appreciation or what you get back from what you put in. Because for me, I've been always like myopic about I'm going to get this done and I don't care what it takes. I will work, 24 hours, but that's not fair for everyone to live either. So one of the things that we've really learned to do is boundaries, and I'm not good with boundaries. So what I make clear to our senior staff, like our VPs, is that if you see staff members who are not able to create those boundaries for themselves, you have to, that's part of your job, is to make those boundaries for them. We have this incredible person, Priscilla, who's our safeguarding person, and she's on our global people and culture team. And she's just this incredible person that kind of talks us through and talks to employees for these purposes of, they worked, crazy hours last week on this proposal and getting it in, then let's give them the time off that they need to recalibrate the week after. So a lot of that stuff is not just a culture thing, but has to be built in systemically. And so that is something that we've instilled, but of course it's not perfect. But one of the things that we do and are much more conscious of, and again, we just hired on this wonderful person, Betsy, our VP of partnerships, that's very conscious of this for her team, and that's something that we want to highlight and reward and show that is important to us. Let's make sure that, the staff have the support that they need, not just, okay, you need to take more time off because you work so hard, but also these are the resources that we have. I mean, because the stuff that we go through and that we live through need a little bit more care and help. So mental health services, if you've, experienced something or saw something, going down, for example, to the border, doing some work with migrants that came to the border. And we took this wonderful individual who's never responded directly. And it was his first time, and he was very affected by what he saw. And for us, it was really important to kind of sit down with him to prepare him afterwards, offer him, do you need extra services? Do you want to talk to somebody? It's all those things of just being conscious, which for me, again, like when I was in the space 20 years ago, like nobody gave a shit. Everyone was just like, you just get it done and you just keep going. So in that sense, it's been so awesome to have this incredible lexicon and tools that we can use now to kind of consider, okay, we need to also help the helpers, make sure that they're in a good space because it's actually going to be more beneficial to us in the end. They're so much more happier. They're going to be able to do better work. And also, like, you just want to help our own team who might be suffering things as well.
Yeah. And I think in many ways, nonprofits are competing now with a broader spectrum of organizations. We're competing for talent with Patagonia and Tesla and all the philanthrocapitalism that I love. Philanthrocapitalism. I love that big business and capitalism is thinking about the triple bottom line and giving back and human good. That's all great, but it's also an amazing marketing tool for them. And it doesn't hit the same as it does for a nonprofit who has transparency and fiduciary responsibility. And right? So the nonprofit space is incredibly important. The younger generations are thinking that they're giving by buying Patagonia, right? Like, so we're competing as nonprofits for talent against organizations that could kill us, crush us with value prop and benefits and care. And so we have to think more creatively, right? We have to. Okay, sorry, I'll get off my soapbox. This is your soapbox, Ann, not mine.
No, that's right on. We're struggling constantly with like the changing landscape of philanthropy. It's really interesting.
Well, let's go back to 2010 and fast forward to today. So you've built this amazing thing. You've been in the game for a long time. In many ways, you're this mature, refined version of the person that uppercut that imbecile in the pavilions.
I'm not sure mature yet, but yeah.
Well, it's attention to manage, right? Maturity is an ongoing process.
Yes.
So, like, what have you learned as CEO? What are the things that you either personally or professionally feel like have most kind of shaped you or changed you or been epiphanies or realizations about this world, about you, about the space?
I think just coming out of such an intense period with COVID, the biggest lesson is that I think two. First is there's no way that you can achieve any level of success, and success is how many people we've helped, without such an incredibly trustworthy and diehard partnership with your colleagues and partners. There's no way any of us would have survived without this constant emotional care that we gave each other. I think the second thing is it does not matter how you do things or what you do. If you try to do anything good in this world, I promise you this, you will receive and go through a ton of criticism, rocks being thrown at you. And developing a thick skin is super important. There's no one that I know, and I think coming out of the space post-COVID is really, nobody's immune to that. And I think it was a naive experience and something that actually Sean helped with so much. It doesn't matter what you do. If you're not, if you're not doing something, then nobody will care. Nobody will say anything. But the good and the bad things that are said about you, you just have to ignore and just know that the things that really matter and the people that really matter are the folks that you're trying to help. And if they are good and they are proud to stand next to you, that's all that matters. And that's how I feel about the staff as well, the team. there's no way we would have gone through this without constantly crying on each other's shoulders.
So we've talked a lot about community, this shoulder to shoulder, crying on each other's shoulders. I love it. It paints such an amazing picture of CORE. We've also talked a lot about CORE as a means to an end. It doesn't exist to perpetuate itself. It exists for something greater. If you had to summarize the greater thing in like 2 or 3 words, what is the ultimate end that CORE is fueling or working towards?
Yeah, our dream, what we've seen. So Haiti's a perfect example. And this was before COVID and the recent spate of apocalyptic violence that's happening right now. We've invested so much in, again, building community and leaders and folks from these areas to essentially respond and have a vision of what is needed for their own community and their people and their country. That I feel like us as an organization looking, I don't know, maybe 10 years from now would be to support the spin-off of those groups to be fully localized and supported by us emotionally, financially, but really kind of, be their own entities. I think about our incredible team lead in North Carolina. She's this amazing grandmother who we met in 2018 that has consistently led the way for her tribe, the Lumbee tribe, and her community to respond to every major crisis that has hit them. Being from the poorest county in North Carolina, she's been addressing every single crisis and bringing us in to say, like, we need to do this. And at some point, I think, seeing the work that she's done, it's definitely a team effort, but she's been the lead for that. And seeing us in a space where, again, we just kind of put that up there, whether, so it's not CORE, it's really Linda, and that's where I think we have a role to play in the next 10 years.
It's like you want to fuel a movement more than build an organization.
Exactly. God, I'm going to use that one.
It's all yours. Free of charge. It's just human language. Can't copyright.
No, I love that. That's exactly it.
Yeah, I love that too. Okay, so I want to use our last 4 minutes here to talk about this topic. You've been in the nonprofit space for a long time. We've talked about philanthrocapitalism. We've talked about generational shifts and what that means in terms of how we operate and function. If you could have a magic wand and you could fix one aspect of this nonprofit space, what would you fix? What would you like? Nah. And then it's like, everybody is better. It's like, mindset, heart, whatever.
I love this question because this is so in the space that we're in right now. I've been, in this space for about 20 some years, and consistently the system is just so broken, and it's been functioning the same way it has been for 70 years now, where the focus was were these like less complex crises in rural areas. Now we're talking about complex crises in urban areas with all of these underlying factors and all these things, and it just doesn't match. I think the one thing that I would switch and I would change is we have been consistently over and over again in these last 75 years been a very supply-driven system, international system and domestic system. It's like, this is the stuff we have, this is what we're going to give. This is the stuff we have, this is what we're going to give. Flipping that to being more demand-driven of this is actually what people need, the way that they need it, and when they need it, how they want it. That hasn't happened yet. And it's like any other company would have been out of business like years ago, decades ago. But yet we're still functioning this way. And to me, that's not how it should be, especially with all of these incredible advancements in technology that has happened. like DoorDash and Uber and all these things. And, I think that there's a place where we really need to flip that power and make sure that it is in the hands of the folks who need it rather than the people who have the things to give it.
That's so good. It's like just in time need providing or versus these warehouses. And you talk to anybody who's in kind of food insecurity and it's such a broken system the way. There's this nonprofit we're working with called Farm. Anyways, it exists to help take all this produce that would go wasted and get it to people because the model that's right now working is not working. Brett Hagler and New Story is using 3D printing to build homes in places like, Brett.
I know them. They're awesome.
A great organization. Yeah. Okay. Last question. In this crazy world we're in, especially you at the top of the organization, in terms of role and food chain, I know you're shoulder to shoulder, but just you have the CEO title, right? That carries something with it. What are the emotions, the feelings that you most experience? And I want you to share the peak, like the feeling that is like when I'm at the peak, it's like, what is that feeling? And when you're in the valley, the desert, what's the feeling?
The peak is, I think I felt that when I was in Georgia about a week and a half ago. We had this conference because we were hiring about 60 people around our health access work. And there are these young women who came to me as I was sitting in, our sessions that were like, can we take a photo together? And I was like, looking around like, who, me? And I'm like, yeah. And they were saying like, you're the reason why we wanted to work here. Seeing a woman of color who's leading this organization is just so awesome. I was like in tears, immediately bawling my eyes out because just to feel like that could put seeds into a young, amazing generation it's so rad. And I think that was a moment. I think the darkest times, it's really been feeling like, wow, I don't think that I am good enough to do what these people deserve. And that's scary, to feel like I'm not worthy enough to give our staff and the people that we're serving enough. Yeah.
Yeah, that's so honest. I really appreciate the vulnerability there. I came to this conclusion a long time ago. I'm not good enough, right? Like I'm just not. I'll never be. So that's a tension to manage, but it doesn't give us an opportunity to get out from the responsibility. It's just, you just live with the inadequacy.
Every day, man. I feel
personal, the scarcity. There's so much we could talk about. That could be its own show, right? How do you live as a leader with this challenging dynamic? And this has been so unbelievably great. Every segment has had these like nuggets. You've been very articulate. The mic sounded great. I really appreciate you doing this. It's been such an honor to have you. And I'm like those young ladies who want to get a selfie, right?
Thank you so much.
For more stories from experts in the industry and to learn how to take your nonprofit into the future, like this video, subscribe to our channel and podcast, and visit makehistoric.com/insights. Thank you so much for listening. I'm Ted Vaughn, and this is Future Nonprofit.